This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host for SNN.Network. And joining me right now is James Sapirstein. He is the president and CEO of AZRX BioPharma. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is AZRX on NASDAQ. James, great to have you on. Thank you for joining me today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And also, thank you again for joining us at our virtual event a couple of weeks ago. We really do appreciate that. And I hope everybody got a chance to hear your webcast.
Thank you.
Yep. So with that, let's start with for those who may have missed the webcast, this is our first interview together. So I'd love to get an overview and history of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, the company was discovered as a private company, and they did their IPO in 2016. So it's been around close to 6 years now. I am the second CEO. I joined the company in October of 2019. And basically, the company is really surrounded and studied different types of indications. First, we had a couple of products in infectious diseases, but we put those to the side. Right now, we are solely an exocrine insufficiency program. So we're looking at pancreatic insufficiency, looking at people with chronic pancreatitis and folks with cystic fibrosis.
So what would you say makes the company and the science unique and different compared to some of your peers out there?
Well, I think it's very different. There have been several companies who've tried to do what we're doing, and we're the ones who are furthest along at this point. So we are looking at patients who have a pancreatic insufficiency. And the way, what that means is these patients cannot take or can't absorb nutrients very well. So they take what we call PERTs, a pancreatic enzyme or enzymatic replacement therapy. These drugs are made up of ground up porcine pancreas that are ground up into pellets and then put into a capsule form, and they're then ingested. And these folks take anywhere from 20 to 48 capsules per day with meals and snacks. We're a yeast-derived enzyme, and we're a regenerative medicine, and we're going to be the most like humans, quite frankly. So we're not porcine-derived, and that's very, very different. We're not going to have the autogenicity issues that some of these other products have, and it's going to be more natural, more human at this point. And we also believe we're going to reduce the amount of capsules that the patients are going to have to take. We think, number one, our capsules are smaller. We're going to have to take between 8 and 16 capsules per day as opposed to 20 to 48. So two large differentiating factors.
Got it. And where's the company currently at in the clinic for some of the stuff you have in development?
Well, we're in phase 2, actually the middle of phase 2. We have one completed study, which is in chronic pancreatitis that read out in late 2018. Then we have another one that read out in cystic fibrosis patients. That was September of 2019. So that was the very first option study, as we call it. And now we're about to initiate option 2, which takes the same study design as option 1 that read out in September 2019, except we're doubling the dose from 2.2 grams to 4.4 grams. And we have an ongoing study right now, which is a phase 2B study, which is a combination study that's happening in Europe. And that is what I like to call a step-up therapy for patients who are on PERTs right now, but they're refractory if they're not doing very well on them. So they've either lowered their dose, they're not taking it. So what we're doing is we're adding our product MS-1819 to that PERT, and that's so I would call it a combination trial, and that's ongoing right now as we speak in Europe.
So since our virtual event when you did the presentation, which was on April 22nd, the company has made numerous announcements regarding your program for cystic fibrosis, as well as the agreement with Creapharm clinical supplies. And you alluded to a little bit in my previous question on where you're at in the clinic for your cystic fibrosis program. But can you describe a little bit more in detail what these developments mean for the company?
Sure. I think in the past, we have not put out a lot of announcements, and I thought it was important in the time of COVID, quite frankly, to put out an announcement that we have our manufacturing lined up. These companies are based in Europe. So I've had a lot of inbound questions from investors. Well, what's happening to your manufacturing? Are you going to be able to get the study initiated on time? And that's really why we put that information out there in the public domain, so that people understand we have our manufacturing lined up. We're not going to have a supply problem, and we'll be able to start this study on time.
Got it. And then actually on the day before the virtual event on April 21st, you guys published your letter to shareholders. Has anything changed and or progressed on anything since you reported on to all your shareholders?
No, well, that's been a short time ago, right? So nothing's really changed. We're still on target, and everything in that shareholder letter holds absolutely true at this point, that we haven't had any further delays.
Listen, I only ask because it seems like, one day goes by, it's like a year, right now. So so I figured we might as well ask, right?
Good question. I agree.
So, I also have to ask, what's your background, prior to joining AzurRx?
Well, I've been around for a long time. I've been in the industry 37 years. And I started in the big pharma with Eli Lilly, and then went to Roche for 10 years, and then Bristol Myers Squibb. And then I went small to a company no one had ever heard of at the time called Gilead, where I was responsible for the global launch of Viriad, at that time their flagship product. So I spent a good deal of time on the commercial side, and then went over to Serono, moved back east, and ran the U.S. group in metabolic and endocrinology for Serono. Then decided to get out on my own and joined a venture capital company, founded a company called Tobira Therapeutics, which we eventually sold to Allergan for $1.7 billion for NASH, actually, for a liver-related program, and did a couple of stints as a CEO. So I've been a public company CEO now for about 10 years, but been a CEO for, I have to think back, 15 years at this point. So it's a lot longer than I thought. But I sit on multiple boards. I sit on the board of Bio. I used to be chairman of BioNJ. So I get involved with multiple companies and consulting as well, but came back into 2019 fully focused on AZRX and the GI space. I find it exciting. What I also like to talk about for a second, because you asked me about my background, a different spin on the story for AZRX with our product. When I first started with Eli Lilly, we launched a product back then called Humulin, which is human insulin. And at that time, insulin had been around for a good 70, 80, 90 years. It was porcine-based and bovine-based. There was no such thing as human insulin. And there was a lot of resistance when we went out and launched that product. Why now? Why human insulin's made from recombinant DNA of from E. coli? Who wants to put E. coli in their body? There was a lot of resistance, and that was one of the first regenerative products on the market back in 1984. Well, MS-1819 has a very similar story. PERTs have been around for a very long time, and they've been around in porcine form. We're about to introduce a humanized form, and the same question, well, why would we want a humanized form? Because it's closer to what's in the human body. And like insulin, I think it's going to replace porcine-derived pancreatic enzymes. So we're pretty excited. So I kind of see the beginning of my career being repeated again later on in life.
You say you're taking it back, right?
Taking it back.
Playing the hits. Sometimes it works.
It works. Why fix something that's not broken? But in this case, we have a better record.
And James, from what you can tell us, what are some of the things that investors should now look for moving forward?
Well, we've got an exciting year ahead. I think you'll see some major milestones, at least the two biggest ones being, we're going to initiate our option 2 trial this year in 2020, very soon. We're going to announce that with an enteric-coated capsule that we're transitioning to as well. And you'll see some smaller announcements around that enteric-coated capsule. The other major announcement you'll see will be some interim data on our combination study. I expect to have that later this summer. Quite frankly, we're still waiting on a couple of other patients. It is open label, so we can talk about some interim data, and I'm pretty excited to share that publicly. Our option 2 study, which initiates soon, will have data, top-line data, either late this year in 2020 or early first quarter 2021.
And James, where can our audience go and find everything they need to know about AZRX?
Thanks, Robert. I think the best place to go is our website, which is www.AZURRX.com. Certainly, we will always put an update to our slides up there. We'll always have our PR that you're welcome to read. And by all means, check our website.
Perfect. Well, James, thank you so much for joining me today. I do really appreciate it. Good luck, stay safe, and I look forward to our next update.
Great. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.